After nearly 3 decades of silence, buried evidence finally started telling a different story about what really happened to Tupac. And this truth wasn't lost by mistake. It was buried on purpose, hidden by people he trusted, erased by those who benefited after he was gone. And that leaves one uncomfortable question hanging in the air. If the truth was this explosive, was not knowing actually keeping everyone safe? The night that never ended began in Las Vegas on September 7, 1996. The city was buzzing. The Strip was glowing, music was blasting from every direction, and thousands of fans packed the area for the Mike Tyson fight. Tupac Shakur was there too, just 25 years old, fresh off watching Tyson knock his opponent out in the first round, riding high, feeling unstoppable. That night, Tupac looked untouchable, laughing with friends, surrounded by energy. Nobody in that crowd could have imagined that just hours later, everything would fall apart. At 11:15 p.m., a white Cadillac pulled up beside the black BMW Tupac was riding in. Flamingo Road and Covell Lane froze in time. Gunfire exploded through the desert air. 13 shots rang out. 4 bullets hit Tupac. The BMW swerved out of control before finally stopping. Blood pooled onto the leather seats. People scattered. Some screamed. Others stood frozen, struggling to understand what they had just witnessed. Tupac was rushed to University Medical Center. His body fought, but the damage was devastating. 1 bullet pierced his lung. Another lodged near his hip. Doctors worked through the night, desperate to save him. Outside the hospital, the world held its breath. Radio stations cut their programming. Fans gathered. Some cried. Others prayed. Shock slowly turned into fear. For 6 long days, Tupac clung to life. His mother, Afeni Shakur, never left his side. Friends came quietly, their faces heavy with grief. Media crowded the hospital, waiting for updates. Every hour dragged on like an eternity. Then, on September 13th at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. The news hit like a second shooting. The world stopped, but even in death, nothing felt resolved. The official explanation was simple: a gang-related drive-by, case unsolved. But anyone who looked closer could see the cracks. Witnesses changed stories. Some refused to talk. Others claimed they saw nothing, even though dozens of people were right there. The white Cadillac vanished. No arrests, no public suspects. The investigation went in circles, chasing shadows that never stayed long enough to catch. Rumors rushed in, where answers were missing. Was it East Coast versus West Coast, revenge for a fight earlier that night, or were powerful people involved who wanted this buried? Questions multiplied faster than facts. Police held press conferences, but their promises rang hollow. Leads dried up. Years turned into decades. What haunted everyone most was the silence. Too many people knew something but stayed quiet. Fear ruled the streets. "Us snitches get stitches" wasn't just a saying. It was survival. Even those who wanted justice chose silence over becoming the next victim. Investigators slammed into wall after wall. Witnesses disappeared or suddenly couldn't remember anything. Surveillance cameras somehow had no footage. The BMW was impounded but never properly examined. Shell casings went missing. Reports were incomplete. Timelines didn't match. It felt like someone wanted the truth buried forever. For 29 years, the case stayed frozen. Families mourned. Fans demanded answers. Documentaries came and went. Theories exploded. Nothing changed. Tupac became a legend, but his death remained a mystery. Then, in 2025, something shifted. While reviewing cold cases, a forensic team discovered a sealed envelope attached to Tupac's file, forgotten for decades, never processed, never tested, never logged. One overlooked piece of evidence changed everything. What was considered closed suddenly wasn't. Investigators realized they'd been staring at the wrong puzzle the entire time. That single detail had the power to unravel the whole story. The night that never ended was finally ready to speak. 30 years of silence followed September 13th, 1996. Tupac's music lived on. Posthumous albums sold millions. Murals appeared worldwide. He became bigger in death than he ever was in life. But one question refused to fade. Who killed Tupac Shakur? And why was the truth hidden? Police blamed a gang-related shooting tied to a fight earlier that night at the MGM Grand. Tupac and his crew had confronted Orlando Anderson in the casino lobby. Cameras caught it. Security broke it up. Investigators claimed Anderson retaliated hours later with help from Southside Crips members. On paper, it sounded clean. On the streets, it didn't add up. Anderson was questioned but never charged. He denied everything. 2 years later, he was killed in an unrelated shooting. Other people connected to that night also died violently in the years that followed. Authorities called it coincidence. Others saw a pattern. Witnesses became the biggest mystery. A riddle. Over 20 cars were stopped at that intersection. Dozens of people saw something, yet memories vanished. Stories changed. Descriptions were recanted. Fear kept mouths shut. In that world, talking to police meant risking your life. Families were threatened. Homes vandalized. The message was clear. Stay quiet or pay the price. Critical evidence vanished or was mishandled. The BMW was released before proper forensic testing. Surveillance footage was missing or ignored. Shell casings disappeared. First responder reports contradicted each other. Times didn't line up. Routes changed. Death. Even the number of shots fired varied depending on the report. What made everything more chilling was Tupac himself. Months before his death, his interviews grew darker. His lyrics talked about betrayal, paranoia, and being hunted. Friends said he felt targeted. He switched hotels, added security. But he never named names. Either he didn't know, or he refused to say. For years, insiders whispered about corrupt officers, powerful industry figures, and deeper motives. Grand juries went nowhere. Private investigators hit the same dead ends. Detectives retired. Files were boxed up. The world assumed justice would never come. Then in early 2025, an audio recording leaked online. A phone call from 1996, recorded days after the shooting. Two men discussed the attack in detail. Names were mentioned. The plan was laid out. They laughed about how easy it was. Authorities could no longer ignore what they'd buried for 30 years. That recording shattered every official explanation. Forced to act, Las Vegas police quietly formed a new task force. This time, cold case specialists armed with modern technology re-examined everything. Video enhancement revealed something stunning. The white Cadillac appeared on multiple cameras that night, following a deliberate route. This wasn't random. Footage from the MGM Grand was reanalyzed frame by frame. In the background of the earlier fight stood a man no one had noticed before. He didn't belong to either group. He watched, made a phone call, then vanished into the crowd. Audio experts examined the leaked call and uncovered something else. Police radio chatter in the background, meaning the conversation happened near law enforcement activity, possibly even inside it. A police facility. And that's where things turn unsettling. How did people tied to the shooting have access to places where officers worked? Were they being shielded? Was information quietly passed along? Forensic ballistics experts went back to the crime scene using modern technology. They digitally recreated the shooting, mapping bullet paths based on Tupac's wounds and the damage inside the BMW. What they found didn't line up with the original story. If all the shots came from the white Cadillac where witnesses placed it, the angles made no sense. At least 3 bullets came from a completely different direction. That meant one of two things. Either there was a second shooter no one reported, or investigators had misunderstood the attack from the very beginning. Crime scene photos were re-examined with fresh eyes. Back in 1996, police focused on obvious details like shell casings and blood patterns. The new team looked deeper. Tire marks suggested another vehicle had been at the intersection, just moments before the shooting. Cigarette butts collected that night were never tested for DNA. A gas station receipt, timestamped minutes before the attack, connected a rumored suspect to the area, but was never followed up on. The most explosive discovery came from police reports filed that night. Several officers documented witness statements that never made it into the official case file. Some mentioned a second dark-colored car speeding away. Others described a suspicious person on foot near the intersection before shots were fired. A few witnesses even reported hearing heated arguing in a nearby parking lot shortly before 11 p.m. None of this was investigated. Those details sat buried in boxes, ignored or intentionally overlooked. As investigators rebuilt the timeline, a disturbing pattern surfaced. The mysterious figure seen in the Miam Grand footage appeared in multiple locations that night. Enhanced images placed him at a gas station where the white Cadillac stopped earlier. Grainy video showed him near the intersection half an hour before the shooting. Phone records, subpoenaed decades ago but barely analyzed, revealed calls between his number and people at locations Tupac visited that evening. That led to a question no one had seriously asked before. What if Tupac wasn't the intended target? What if someone else in the BMW was meant to die? Or what if the entire attack was staged to look like something it wasn't, throwing investigators off from the very start? Then came the realization that shook the case to its core. A name missing from official police files belonged to someone Tupac trusted. This wasn't a rival gang or a distant enemy. The evidence pointed inward. Betrayal from inside his own circle. People who smiled at him, ate with him, worked beside him, while plotting behind his back. And as always, money sat at the center of it all. By 1996, Tupac was a financial powerhouse. His albums sold millions. His movie roles brought in serious money. Death Row Records was thriving largely because of him. But success bred tension. Tupac was becoming too independent, too outspoken, too unwilling to be controlled. He talked openly about leaving Death Row, starting his own label, owning his masters, taking back his future. That kind of freedom threatened people who made fortunes keeping him locked into contracts. Suge Knight's relationship with Tupac was complicated. He bailed Tupac out of prison in 1995, but that help came with expectations, albums, loyalty, obedience. Knight was notorious for intimidation and violent enforcement of business deals. At first, Tupac felt grateful. Over time, that gratitude turned into frustration. He felt trapped in a system that used him but didn't respect him. Behind the scenes, financial records painted an ugly picture. Tupac generated massive revenue but saw only a fraction of it. Contracts favored executives while artists stayed dependent on advances and debt. Tupac started asking questions. He hired lawyers. He planned to renegotiate or walk away. That made him dangerous to people who needed him compliant. Industry insiders later whispered about meetings Tupac wasn't invited to, conversations about his future held without him. Investors tied to Death Row feared losing millions if he left. Slowly, some began viewing him not as an asset, but as a liability. The language was cold, calculated, like discussing stock, not a human life. Street politics made everything worse. Tupac wasn't a gang member, but his association put him in the middle of violent conflicts he didn't fully grasp. The East Coast-West Coast beef wasn't just real, it was profitable. Album sales exploded when tensions rose. Some people had no interest in calming things down, even if it put Tupac in danger. Then investigators uncovered something chilling. Just weeks before Tupac's death, Death Row Records took out life insurance policies on him, worth millions. While insuring artists wasn't unheard of, the timing raised alarms. Why increase coverage right before a dangerous period? And who benefited if Tupac died? The beneficiary was Death Row itself, meaning his death would instantly inject cash into a label rumored to be struggling behind the scenes. Phone records revealed even more betrayal. In the days leading up to September 7th, calls were made between people in Tupac's inner circle and individuals tied to rival gangs. Some happened just hours before the shooting. The calls weren't recorded, but their timing suggested coordination. Someone was feeding information about Tupac's movements to people willing to act on it. Security that night was unusually weak. Tupac's regular bodyguards were told to stay behind. He was assured the Vegas trip would be calm, safe, low-key. Las Vegas was never safe for someone like Tupac. Cutting security didn't look accidental. It looked intentional. Someone wanted him exposed. By 2025, former associates finally started talking. Fear gave way to guilt. One admitted he was told to drive a specific route so Tupac's car would pass through predictable intersections. Another confessed he was instructed to keep Tupac distracted so he wouldn't notice being watched. These weren't enemies. These were people on his payroll. The most damning evidence came from a confidential FBI document declassified in 2024. It revealed Tupac had been monitored for years under a program targeting influential black activists and entertainers. Agents knew he was being threatened. They documented meetings between industry executives and known criminals. They recorded conversations where violence against Tupac was discussed openly, yet they never warned him. Surveillance continued right up until September 6, 1996, the day before he was killed. When investigators finally assembled everything in 2025, the truth became impossible to ignore. Tupac Shakur was not killed by random violence or spontaneous revenge. His death was the result of multiple forces working together: music executives protecting profits, corrupt officials willing to look away, and street criminals hired to pull the trigger. The MGM grand fight wasn't the cause, it was the cover. Orlando Anderson became the perfect scapegoat, someone with a visible motive, but the real shooters knew exactly where Tupac would be. The white Cadillac wasn't roaming Vegas by chance, it was waiting. Phone records confirmed coordination. Surveillance footage showed the car parked, engine running, lights off minutes before Tupac arrived. The attack was fast and precise. 13 shots in seconds. Then the Cadillac vanished into streets where cameras mysteriously didn't work and police presence was non-existent. Law enforcement failed Tupac deliberately. Officers were told to slow the investigation. Witnesses were discouraged. Evidence disappeared. Detectives who pushed too hard were reassigned. The message was clear: let it go cold. Years later, retired officers admitted they were pressured to accept the gang narrative or risk their careers. Why protect the lie? Because exposing the truth would expose the system, an industry built on exploitation. Government agencies illegally surveilling black cultural figures. Profits placed above human life. Lawsuits would follow. Careers would end. Fortunes would collapse. So silence held for 30 years. People died with secrets others were paid to forget. Those who spoke were discredited or threatened. Afeni Shakur fought for answers until her death in 2016, but never got them. The system that should have protected Tupac protected his killers instead. And hip-hop lost one of its most powerful voices forever. An entire generation grew up learning a brutal lesson: speaking truth could get you killed. Trust between artists and their labels cracked, then shattered. The East Coast-West Coast divide only got uglier, leading to even more bloodshed, including the death of the notorious Biggie just 6 months later. Hip-hop shifted almost overnight. The music became safer, less political, more about escape than resistance. The message was loud and clear: challenge the system, and you won't survive it. What made the truth even harder to swallow was how avoidable it all was. If the FBI had acted on what they already knew, Tupac could have been warned. If death row executives had seen him as a human being instead of a revenue stream, he wouldn't have been left exposed. If police had done their jobs honestly from day one, the killers would have been caught before evidence vanished. Every institution meant to protect him chose not to. Every person who could have stepped in decided their interests mattered more than his life. When the full investigation results were finally released in late 2025, the world stopped to listen. News networks cleared their schedules. Social media erupted with rage, grief, and a painful sense of validation. Millions who had suspected a cover-up for decades were proven right, but that confirmation didn't bring peace. It made the loss hurt even more, because it showed just how preventable Tupac's death had been. Outside the Las Vegas courthouse, fans gathered as investigators spoke. Some held signs demanding justice. Others lit candles and blasted Tupac's music into the night. Tears flowed. Strangers hugged. The crowd was diverse, spanning races and generations, proof of how deeply Tupac's voice had shaped culture. For them, this wasn't just about solving a celebrity murder. It was about finally being heard after decades of being dismissed. Tupac's family received the news with conflicted emotions. His sister Sikua Shakur spoke publicly about feeling relief and devastation at the same time. Relief that the truth was finally out. Devastation that her brother had been betrayed by people he trusted most. She shared how their mother, Afeni Shakur, died without ever knowing what really happened, a pain that haunted her final years. Now the family had answers, but many of those responsible were dead or protected by expired statutes of limitation. The music industry responded with uncomfortable silence. Major labels released carefully worded statements offering sympathy while avoiding accountability. Behind closed doors, lawyers scrambled. Former death row executives either refused interviews or vanished from public view. A few retired insiders spoke anonymously, admitting exploitation and dangerous practices were common in the 90s, while insisting things had changed. Artists and activists weren't buying it. They pointed out that young musicians still sign predatory contracts, still get pushed into manufactured beefs, and still struggle to own their work. Legal proceedings followed, but progress was slow. Some suspects named in the investigation had died years earlier. Others pleaded the fifth. The conspiracy stretched across so many institutions that prosecutors struggled to build airtight cases. Proving who pulled the trigger was one thing. Proving who ordered it was another. Even with overwhelming evidence, justice remained partial and painfully incomplete. What stood out most was the reminder of what the world lost. Tupac wasn't just a rapper. He was a poet, an actor, an activist, a thinker who spoke for people society ignored. His music tackled poverty, police brutality, racism, and survival with a raw honesty that made listeners feel understood. He challenged street violence and institutional oppression at the same time. He refused to be boxed in or controlled. And at just 25, he was still growing, still evolving. Imagine what he could have created with another 30 years. Hip-hop changed after Tupac's death, and not in a good way. The political edge of 90s rap faded. Labels pushed safer, more commercial sounds. Artists learned that being too outspoken, too radical, too independent could be dangerous. Tupac's assassination sent a warning that echoed through the industry. Stay in your lane or pay the price. Some artists kept speaking truth anyway. Many chose survival instead. The culture lost part of its fearlessness the night Tupac was taken. After the revelations, documentaries and books flooded the market. Some focused on the investigation. Others zoomed out, questioning power, corruption, and who decides which voices get silenced. Film directors announced projects promising to tell the real story. Tupac's music surged on streaming platforms as new generations discovered his work and finally understood why he was legendary. His relevance never faded, but now the truth gave his words an even heavier meaning.